All right, let's discuss this more. Joining us now, forensic pathologist Dr. Cyril Wack. Doctor, it's great to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there's a lot more we know this morning, but I think that also means there's a lot more that we do not know. From the results and the reports that we have of this preliminary autopsy that was requested by the family, and there's a diagram that was provided to CNN of the gunshot wounds. From your perspective, what does this answer? What questions? What does this definitively tell you?
Based upon what I have read and seen thus far, it appears that the two shots that struck Michael Brown in the head had to have been fired while he was falling forward. He was 6'3". I do not know the height of Officer Wilson, but to my knowledge, he's not a 6'8" guy that would have been shooting downward. In order for a bullet to be moving downward in the head of a 6'3" guy, obviously that head has to be in a crouched position. One shot reportedly entered the top of the head. Do not know where it exited. Another shot, we are told, went in the right eye area, exited from the jaw, and re-entered above the clavicle, the collarbone on the right side. So here you have a clear downward trajectory of entrance, exit, and re-entrance. Clearly, that head had to have been down in this kind of a position. The arms, it's more difficult to ascertain. I've only seen 4 shots depicted on the right arm, and I do not know where the exit wounds were. Supposedly 3 bullets were recovered in the first autopsy. One must keep in mind that the arms can be in various kinds of positions, flexion, extension, lateral, medial movements, and so on. Also, in terms of any shooting, remember, the person being shot is highly unlikely to be standing there as an immobile target. That person is ducking, bending, twisting, juking, jumping, falling, and what have you. So that all has to be reconstructed. Supposedly then a shot fired while the officer was in the car. That car needs to be thoroughly examined, and gunpowder residue must be looked for in the area from which the officer is shot.
And let me ask you about the question of gunpowder residue, because from the report so far, this forensic pathologist says there was no gunpowder residue found on Michael Brown's body. However, he notes that he did not have access to Michael Brown's clothes. How key is that?
Well, the clothing obviously must be examined to see if there is any gunpowder residue on the clothing. But I believe the clothing was rather flimsy, a typical summer attire for a young boy. So it's highly likely that if the shots had been fired at relatively close range, gunpowder would have made its way through just a little T-shirt, if indeed it was some kind of a flimsy garment. With a handgun, we'll see stippling. Think of stippling, taking a black pen coming down on white paper, and that little bit of punctate blackening, that's what we call stippling. Gunpowder residue is the actual carbonaceous material, the burning fragments that come out from the muzzle of the gun, and they come onto the skin and they deposit, and depending on how close it is, you may actually have black soot. A handgun, you will not get stippling beyond 24 inches, usually not beyond 18 inches. Once it goes beyond that, then you have a problem. You can't say that it was 28 or 35 or 43 or 92 inches. There's no way then to determine what the range would have been, except to say that it was a distant shot beyond the 18, 24 inches. So that is important too, to try to reconstruct and see where the officer was, why he continued to shoot from that distance.
And also, Doctor, from your perspective then, if we have some definitive answers, as you say, what do you think, what is the biggest question in your mind as a forensic pathologist that you don't see in this report that you think is important?
Well, any forensic pathologist doesn't function in a vacuum. In a case like this, you have to get reports and you have to do reconstruction. You have to go to the scene and then play it out with the people as the actors. Then the ballistics studies have to be done using a prototype of that gun to see what would be deposited in terms of gunpowder residue and stippling. Then you have to see what the different stories are from the various people and put it all together. But one thing you can be sure of, that once somebody is struck in the head twice, it's highly unlikely that they are going to continue to move. So most probably you can reconstruct to this point and say that the shots that struck Michael Brown in the arm hit him first in whatever sequence, and that's not going to be possible, I think, ever to determine what the sequence of those 4 shots are. And then the 2 headshots toppled him, and they would have been fatal. And I repeat, that for shots like that to have a downward trajectory in a man the size of Michael Brown, that body had to have been lurching forward. And somebody's going to say, well, could he not have been charging like a bull? It's possible, highly unlikely. I think he was falling to the ground, having been struck, and as he was falling, those shots were fired, giving you the downward trajectory.
Let me also ask
multiplicity.
Let me also ask you on the question of those gunshots. I mean, from this preliminary report, they say that the gunshots, the entry wounds, the gunshots were from the front, is what it suggests. I was looking back over the eyewitness reports that, as the witnesses have spoken to the media so far, all 3 of them at one point or another in their recounting of what they saw said that they believed that Michael Brown had been shot from behind. If this autopsy report doesn't suggest that, could that still be the case? Is that still a possibility, even though we don't see it here?
Well, clearly one can determine that no shots were struck in the back, at least as far as we are told thus far. As far as the arm is concerned, I will repeat what I said before, that think of the arm. I'll show you. look, supine and prone and so on. Do you get the idea? So when you're running and your arms are flailing, what is the exact position of the arms when the bullet hits you? So that's a difficult reconstruction to make. And the fact that the shots are reportedly from the front, that's based upon what the pathologist sees when the body is in front of him. We talk about the anatomic position, the body facing you, lying on the autopsy table, face up, palms up, and that's when we talk about right to left, up, down, front, back, and so on. But that has nothing to do with the actual dynamics of how the shooting occurred in terms of the position of somebody, especially someone who is fleeing, someone who perceives himself about to be shot or hears a shot and is moving and twisting and turning. And I repeat again, the arms, you can see, move in many different directions.
No, that's an important, I think, a very important perspective, as many people are just trying to piece together what can be learned from this preliminary autopsy report. Dr. Cyril Reck, thank you very much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.